like you. Make sure you have a shave before you come over, though. All right. Meanwhile, the number of departures from Japan tourism came to 16.63 million. Now, this is interesting because what that means is we have 6.63 million tourists departing, right? 16.63 million departing, 8.861 million coming. That means roughly there's around 8.02 million tourists leaving. And I wonder how many of these people came over and thought they taught in Iowa, they teach, and they come over and they teach, and they just couldn't get the jobs, they couldn't make the connections with the right kind of people, and they just looked at Japan and said, nope, that ain't for me. Or they came over and they met a girl and they broke up and they said, nope, Japan ain't for me, I'm not going to stick around. Or they came over and they met a girl and they stuck around, and then they broke up, and then they couldn't stick around, and then they wanted to stay, but then they couldn't find a job, so they couldn't stick around, so they left. Or they came over and they met a girl and they stuck around, and then they broke up, and then they got a job, and they actually made a big success for a couple of weeks, and then they got the hoof, and they were fired. And then they tried to find another job, and they looked for months and months and months, or days, until the money ran out, for days and days, and then they said, nope, that's it, got to go home. Then they went back home. This is kind of interesting, because not everyone can be in Tokyo all the time. It's an expensive city for a lot of people. I mean, you have people, those of you listening to this podcast from the wilds of China or Borneo, or, out there in the wilds of New Zealand or somewhere like that. There are people living in Tokyo here, 5 to a room. I mean, I've seen some people here from first world countries like New Zealand, and they're living like 4 guys in the same room. So, it ain't easy. So if you come over here and you met a girl, and then you broke up, and then you got a job for a week, and then you got fired, and then you try to look for another job for days and days until the money ran out, and then you couldn't stick around, there's a reason for that. And the reason is, it is not a cheap city to live in, okay? It's not like living out in the barn. It's expensive. It's Tokyo. It's the world's biggest city, and that's why I live here. I mean, it's so exciting. So, what's interesting is, if 8 million tourists left, where did they come from? They can't all be people who couldn't get jobs. Maybe they were. Maybe they're people you know. Maybe it's you. Maybe you went home. You got tired of Japan. You spent all your money up, and a few days later, you had to leave. You arrived, and you looked for the job, and you spend, good week looking for a job, and you can't find it. So then, 3 days, 4 days later, you run out of money. You got a decision. You stay here and you starve, or do you go home? It's not easy to make a decision when you got lots of cash. But if you're just sitting on a few days, and you spend a whole week looking for a job, and you got no job at the end of that week, and then you fly, and you got no money left after a few days, it's actually a very easy decision. You want to go home, or you want to stay and live on the street. I mean, it ain't cheap living in Tokyo for a lot of people, and a lot of people come over here. I see them with the backpacks, and they have a great time, and they're tourists. I also see a lot of people with backpacks who ain't exactly tourists. They're people who come over here and they stay for days and days and days and weeks till the money runs out, and they go home. And they have their little carnival shows, and they try to make money busking. They have hats on the sidewalks saying, "Please help me." They're desperately looking for jobs. They do anything, teaching English, cleaning up, working as a musician, you name it. And these folks come over, and they come over by the plane load. And what's interesting is, last year, 8 million of them went home. That's a lot of people. That is a lot of people. Basically, it's interesting. The French like it, the Thais, the Taiwanese, the Koreans, and the Chinese. It's a lot easier for the Chinese to get in now with the visas. So with this increased competition, I wonder how many people would actually like to stay here and make a career out of it. What kind What parts of Tokyo do you like? What do you like about Tokyo? And would you like to make a career out of it? Would you like to stay here in Japan? And on that note, I'll tell you a bit about myself. I came to Japan as a college kid years and years ago. I mean, we're talking years ago. We're talking about when Carrie Fisher was still attractive. And I came to Japan, and I was very lucky. My family's been associated with Japan for some time, and I've been coming here since I was a little kid, really, on and off. And then I basically said, okay, finished my degree, I'm going to work here. And so I started working at a good company, and I worked and made a lot of money back in the salad days. And I did quite well for myself. And, there's a few bumps here, up and down, and I'm not going to tell you everything about me. That would be giving too much away. But, I came here a long time ago, and I worked at a big company, did big long hours, and wore the suits and ties, and had a lot of fun and the parties. And then I realized one day, I woke up one morning, and I remember it. I was only very young when I did it. And I said, what am I doing here, working every day? I mean, I should be here on holidays. I want to recapture the feeling of being in Tokyo on holidays. And so I basically quit my work. And within a few months, I was, having a lot of fun. I'd finished my work, and I was having a lot of fun. It was great fun. I was having a lot of fun and meeting a lot of people and having a lot of free time during the day. I used to bump into old friends who used to be on their way to work. And I'd still be up, but I'd be doing my own thing. I wouldn't be going to the office. But I'd run into a bunch of old friends, and I'd see them and say, hey, have a nice day at work. And what I want to know from you guys is how many of you are here in T-Town, Tokyo, looking for that dream career? Do you want to make a dream career out of living in Tokyo? Because it's pretty tough for a lot of people these days, not just the gaijins, but the Japanese too. They make them work longer hours. They make them have half the pay they had before. So what chance did you have, and what chances did you take, and what chances have you grabbed and made make hay while the sun shines, as they say? What have you done in Tokyo that you're proud of? And for those of you who didn't want to stick around in Tokyo, how many days were you here? Tell us a story on the forum. Tell them your story on the forum. Because, there's a lot of forums around and people are gas-bagging and telling people about how great they are or what wonderful lives they have. And a lot of that is nonsense, I can tell you. I know some of these people, and they're making a lot of this stuff up. So here's a chance to tell me on the Tokyo forum what's going on. And actually, we will feature some of the stories on the forum. Of course, we'll protect your identity because that's important. And especially if you're working in Tokyo, one of the big companies, you don't want to give out your identity. So make sure you don't use your real name. Join the forum and use some kind of name like Tokyo Gem or Osaka Ali or something like that. All right. Well, 8 million people left. I wonder how many of them were French.
Glad you tuned in. Glad you listened to the first debut Tokyo Forum podcast. We got some more interesting things coming up next week. Some things are controversial. Some things are going to be kind of run-of-the-mill news. Hope to see you then. See you on the Tokyo Forum. Make sure you post your comments. I want to hear what you have to say about the show and the stories. Mr. 2, the laptops, the backpacker and the English teacher, and everything else we featured today on the show. And I'll see you there. I'm Tokyo Joe. Make sure you visit me at tokyojoe.tk and the tokyoforum.tk. Register on the forum, and I'll see you there. Okay, take care.